My next guest on PRmoment Insight Leadership Series is Prasidha Menon, who is not only VP but also the Global Head of Communications for OYO Hotels and Homes. Prasidha is one of the few Indian communication professionals who leads the communication function sitting in India for a global team. Welcome, Prasidha.
Thank you so much, Parul. Thank you for inviting me here. It's always an honor and privilege. Very, very excited to be speaking with you today.
Thank you, Prasada, and welcome. Starting off with the first question, it needless to say, it's not been an easy 2020 for anybody who works in the hospitality sector. So, what would you say were your top two learnings about handling communication during the first phase of COVID and now? Now that there is some, I wouldn't say stability, but some expectation about how things will pan out.
Yeah, sure. Yes, like you rightly said, it's been a very, very hard year. I think it's a hard year for most businesses and especially the hospitality industry. Right from the beginning, with all the travel restrictions and lockdowns, things have impacted us in way too many ways. And it was very, very hard the early days. But I think, as I kind of look back, I feel that during the first phase, a lot of what we did, purely if I'm talking from a communications perspective, it was to bring together all your stakeholders, whether it's your employees, your partners, your customers, or your investors or shareholders or board members, and making sure everybody understands that what does this pandemic mean for us as a business? How is it impacting various aspects of our business? And ensuring that there is a very comprehensive yet relevant and continuous communication and engagement with all of these stakeholders. So that was the highest priority then. Keeping everybody updated about what are the actions we are taking, whether it was about the kind of sanitization efforts we were planning to take once the hotels open up, or whether it was kind of informing the employees about basic things like, okay, now we're going to start working from home. Here's how we're going to kind of in some form ensure it's business as usual. So keeping that communication going at that time was the highest priority. I think once we kind of moved through that phase, it was then a lot about all functions kind of coming together and looking at how are we going to support the company as we kind of get into some sort of business planning for a COVID impacted world. So spending that kind of time to understand that, okay, now here's the opportunity for you to step up. Keep in mind that long-term mission that you had identified for yourselves. Take into consideration everything that has kind of changed because of this pandemic and kind of craft that way forward. So that was the primary phase. And I think as we now come to a point where all businesses have in some form or the other understood the impact the COVID has had on the business, and what are the kind of actions one needs to take for the long-term sustainability of the business. Now it is a lot more about planning and having very audience-focused messages that you want to drive home so as to help people, kind of while accepting the new normal, kind of building the business for the future. So that's how things have kind of changed over the last 7-8 months.
I'm curious to know that there's a lot of talk now that COVID has made the role of PR and corporate communication much more important. Did you actually see that on the ground during your work with OYO? And how would you say the integrated messaging went ahead at OYO?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, I feel like I was always blessed because, I think at OYO, communications has always been a very, very strategic function. I had the opportunity and the privilege to work directly with our founder, Ritesh Agarwal, who is extremely cognizant about the importance of communications and what lack of good communications can cause to a brand. And I think that's the same culture top down that was ingrained at OYO, and that's how while I kind of manage various countries and various business divisions from a communications point of view and work with stakeholders there has always been that respect for the function. But I think what COVID did was it kind of elevated the role of the function a little more. And I feel like now the in a lot of situations, the comms team as the true guardians of the company's external reputation, as well as the bridge for the company to communicate to its various stakeholders, has assumed an even more important role. Not only do we involve ourselves in terms of the execution aspects of communications, which could be probably putting out an article or probably sending this note to your partners or organizing a webinar or things like that, but we also have now started playing the role of kind of completely deciding or playing a role of in some way driving a certain decision in one direction. Just as an example, as we were coming out of COVID, or I shouldn't say coming out of, but at least kind of the first few months we had dealt with, and we were trying to see how when hotels open up, how do we kind of move forward with things. And in even kind of deciding what is the kind of services or special kind of changes that we need to make to welcome the customers to the hotels, we had an extremely important role to play. So did our partners from the brand and the marketing team, and kind of coming up with the sanitized stays concept, and asking that question, that what is that one thing which is going to help our customers feel safe in a hotel. And then how do you not only design that, which is more of a business responsibility, but how do you communicate it in the most authentic and effective manner, because trust and credibility is what is most important in times like this, because everybody is anxious and everybody is feeling the pressure of the pandemic.
You become a bit of a crisis specialist, because first with Uber and now with Oyo. So, what I mean, how do you manage your work life, given that it seems to be a perpetual state of crisis, and COVID has only added another layer of that to that.
Well, that's like the one question which keeps coming to me from my family as well. Yes, true. I have kind of, I feel like I've had several crash courses in crisis communications, and now I've come to a point where I feel that when issues and crisis happen. Somewhere in my mind, the scenario planning kind of happens very automatically. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think what it has helped me in terms of my professional growth is that I kind of have now started looking at situations or any kind of a scenario that we are faced with a very preemptive kind of a lens, and that not only helps me put myself in the shoes of any stakeholder who could in any way get impacted, and kind of bring in those insights which probably somebody from the business who's just kind of launching, say, a new category of hotels, or kind of probably coming up with a new special offer for a certain audience segment, does not proactively or preemptively think about. So I feel like my value addition from that perspective has become so important that now you as the comms team, and me as a PR professional, I get the opportunity to be there in every decision making right from the start. So that's fun. I love that side of things. Being awake across time zones to attend to situations like this, or kind of sacrificing weekends. I know when we started off this conversation, you and I both kind of had that feeling of this being the first weekend where we weren't really working. So I think that's a good thing. That's a good break to have. But yeah, I think you kind of set a schedule around things. You create playbooks, and then of course you have to be that certain type to enjoy it. And I think I am that type, so I'm enjoying it. I love it.
So, one bit of advice from the Prasida Menon crisis playbook, which communicators should apply. It would. I think it would be helpful to get one big insight, that a must-do thing.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest learnings is the importance of the first communication that goes out from the brand. I think that's your make or break moment. You either are able to control the narrative right then. And when I say control the narrative, I mean kind of make it a little more factual, because yes, if something has gone wrong, it has gone wrong. It's important to acknowledge, but kind of bring in your perspective as a company, and take that narrative forward while you kind of address everything else on the table. So I think your first communication, whether it is your first holding statement, or for that matter, it could be the phone call you're making, or how you're responding to the first journalist who's reached out to you and pointed out a certain situation. I think that matters a lot, because once that first round of response goes out, then things kind of take its own turn, because then you're kind of updating and providing more context and things like that. So that to me is something very, very important, and I feel like once you get that right, which also means that you need to have the ability to preempt a lot of things. You need to have good knowledge of your business, and have be able to kind of connect the dots as to what would have happened, and know when to apologize and when to not really apologize, but kind of take a step back and try and provide your own perspective to think to the situation, very logically, but with a lot of empathy.
That's great, great advice. First appearances matter not only in the face-to-face communication, but in communication per se. So also, given that the COVID crisis came on the heels of and a reduction of employees in Oyo, which was going on through 2019, and given that, how are you? What kind of effort are you making to engage the internal stakeholders given this background and the uncertainty which is unavoidable at the moment?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yes, it was a tough phase. I think, like most other hospitality brands, we also went through a situation where we were presented with a series of really bad options, and we had to pick the worst option, as our founder puts it very correctly. And it was really hard, but as a company, we needed to give ourselves a fighting chance to come back, and therefore some of these decisions were important. Having said that, I think as we kind of came out of that phase, some of the things that emerged as very important, things to kind of keep in mind, were, of course, ensuring a very high level of engagement. But when I say engagement, I mean real conversations. So I think we started with everything, starting from having a very good schedule of one-on-ones, skip level conversations, ensuring the frequency of your town halls, where your executives were addressing the employees, or probably even the internal notes which were being exchanged, or simple things like something we run at Oyo called the Oyo Shots, where we send out the Oyo news to the rest of the employee base. The frequency of things like that were kind of increased. We have something called Oyo Spotlight, where we kind of put a certain leader, or a certain function head into the spotlight and talk about that person, what motivates that person. So a lot of personal stories were being shared. We started something called the Unplugged Sessions, where we had a certain businesses kind of talk about what they were focusing on, and it was an unplugged session where people would log in and kind of listen and have the opportunity to ask questions. So a series of initiatives like this, which was all about very honest, transparent engagement. Because when things like this happen, it is a very natural reaction of employees, or just any of us, where there is a certain level of anxiety. You're not sure what's going to happen, and a lot of that already exists in the environment itself too. So I think for us it was very important to kind of reinstill that feeling of we are a family and we are kind of going through this together. And here are the things which are unavoidable, and we have to go ahead and take some tough decisions, but here is where we are going to stand by each other and support each other through these tough times.
That's actually very well explained. I will last series of questions before we wind up this really interesting conversation. What are your thoughts on own media? Because of course, what is happening to mainstream media is evident to everybody, and a lot of firms are going in for very good own media properties. What are your thoughts on that? I haven't really seen anything specific out of Oyo about that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, you're right. We do have own media platforms, but I think those have so far been a lot more focused on our customers, and then we have created some specific properties for our partners. And when I say own media, an example or probably a slightly different example for an own media asset that we've been using is, we actually created an app called the OYO app, wherein all our partners are registered, and we kind of use that as a platform to talk to them about anything new that we are doing. Sometimes just giving them basic tips on health and hygiene, or something like during these times, what are the kind of how do you kind of preserve food or kind of maintain cleanliness, a lot of those kind of tips and information. Or it could be something as critical as any sort of a new business terms and conditions updates and things like that. So those kind of properties are something that we have created. But actually, taking a step back, I personally feel that own media is going to, in the coming times, play a much stronger role for companies, especially I feel like for brands or companies like us, which are young and kind of in the phase where there are a lot of things happening. There is a global presence, the pace at which things have moved and continue to move. I feel like you need to have your own voice, because sometimes when you don't have your voice, a lot of times we face this at Oyo, where a certain rumor, a WhatsApp joke, or something like that, a screenshot gets taken and it reaches certain individuals, and then that becomes like the story next day, and you're like, okay, what really happened? Like, I remember a few days back there was a post on social media where somebody, I don't know if it was a mistake or it was unknowingly, spoke about an investment we were making in a coffee brand, and I was like, well, that's not happening. And I checked around a bit just to be doubly sure that that's not true, because this was in China. And then I had to go back and just respond to them saying that we at Oyo love coffee, but we aren't really investing in this brand. So I think in situations like this, if you have your own platform to share your own stories, that is something that really helps. Off late, what we have started doing is, because we've had a very strong internal communications mechanism, so a lot of conversations or communication that goes out from our founder or from our India CEO Rohit, and others around the world, we do try and create extracts of that we put out on our blog. But that's just the first step. And as we move forward, I do kind of have this in mind to kind of create and uplift that Oyo blog a little bit more. And there are a lot of brands doing a very good job of it. I quite used to like what Flipkart was doing. So I think lots to learn and kind of, steal with pride and innovate and use. So, yeah.
Anything specific you could share that you're planning to do with own media? Anything specific?
I think too early to talk about it, but yes, we've been kind of contemplating on how do you kind of, in some form or the other, revive the Oyo blog, add a lot more of authentic content pieces, whether it is direct interviews with your partners or probably, with employees, kind of moving beyond the senior first level and second level leadership and bringing in a lot of other very talented individuals that we have across the company to talk about things that they have been working on. Oyo, for example, is one of the very few tech driven hospitality companies that exist today, and there's a lot of work that happens on the tech side, but those are stories that we haven't had the chance to share as often as we'd like. So picking up themes like this, which we feel very passionately about, and we know that there is a lot of difference we are making in that particular space, as well as at an industry level, and using these platforms to share those stories. So that's something that we have in mind.
That's really interesting. Tech is really, I mean, it's the one, this is sort of the one thing which rules everything right now. But it'd be interesting to know how tech is going into the oil operations. Final set of questions, Prasida. How do you see, we've talked a lot about integration, but I've always felt it's a buzzword which doesn't really, reach anywhere, so-called integrated communication strategy. In your experience and opinion, based on what you've been through for the last 2 years, how should marketing and communications integrate in the future?
Yeah. Very interesting question, and I do understand where you're coming from when you say it's a buzzword. I feel that it remains a buzzword until and unless Top down, there is that respect and value for the communications function as much as for the marketing function. And I know where the challenge comes in. Communications function always kind of struggles to show the value because of the lack of a very well accepted measurement parameter that a lot of times it's easier for the brand and the marketing team to come out and show that. I think that always comes in as a challenge. But having said that, I feel once there is that top down understanding of the value that communication brings to the table, and a lot of onus of that lies with us communications professionals too, because if we are able to maintain a balance between striving to achieve reputational goals but also kind of deliver on business outcomes, it's easier to kind of move in that direction. And then I think that integration comes in much easily. I can tell you this, that at Oyo, I feel very privileged and again blessed to have the support from our brand and marketing team, and this wonderful gentleman called Mayur Hola who heads brand for us. And every campaign that we've worked on or everything that we go out with on the media side of things, we've always had a conversation and kind of try to create a campaign versus kind of deliver on a brand campaign and a PR campaign separately. And every time we've collaborated, things have kind of moved and moved in the right direction. And I think now that collaboration has become a way of work, wherein it's a very strong thought partnership, where both teams have the ability to at some point take a step back and say, okay, this is a hero campaign which the brand's going to lead. For example, our Sanitize Taste campaign, where Sonu Sood, who's a film actor and also one of our hotel owners, is kind of leading that campaign for us from a brand point of view. That's purely something that our colleagues from the brand team have conceptualized and come up with. But we are the ones kind of amplifying it and taking it to the world at large. Or on another side, if we are kind of promoting homestays in Kevadia, which is a much more stronger PR campaign with a very strong corporate reputation goal, then you kind of lead with it and have your colleagues on the other side help kind of cross promote it. So I think that's the strong partnership that exists, and I'm talking here at a very executional level, because I think at a strategic level, that's something which completely comes top down. So yes, it can happen. I have experienced it, but it's still a lot at individual level versus I think we still have a long way to go.
One last question, Prasida. Given what we've just discussed in this last question, how do you see the role of the corporate communicator evolving in the future? Also, the thing you mentioned about business outcomes, what business outcomes can you really demonstrate in PR?
Sure, very good question. And I think this is actually one of my favorites too. Like I remember when I kind of started off at that time, I have kind of worked with brands and companies where the marketing head or the CMO used to kind of also run PR. And we used to secretly be happy about it because we felt that, okay, we knew PR better, and, it was easier to kind of deliver the kind of outcomes and have a happy client. But jokes apart, I think, that was how things started back then. Over a period of time, you have seen the roles of the CMO and the CCO getting a lot more defined. I personally today strongly believe that in times to come, there is a huge opportunity and potential for the CCO to be running marketing too, given just how the dynamics have changed. The reputation cost for any company can run into billions of dollars. And I think we've all seen examples of brands that have kind of suffered from, one thing going wrong from a reputation point of view, and things kind of changing for them in ways that were hard to kind of repair. And I think as communications professional, that's something that I'm very conscious of, as we kind of handle situations small or large. So I think there is that huge potential. And somewhere I had read this somewhere, there was a very interesting mention about performance marketing being the bread and butter, and how that helps kind of um, deliver on business goals, and how brands that are now looking at purpose marketing are being able to stand out. I think this very interesting gentleman had written this on LinkedIn. And when I was reading it and I was thinking about it, I feel that there is a side of that for PR as well, where there are a lot of things which are like your performance PR, for the lack of a better way to coin it, which could be about new category launches. It could be about here are the five beautiful Oyo properties that you could go and live in when you travel to Denmark next, like the one right behind me. So those are the kind of things which can definitely help in terms of footfalls and delivering on a lot of business outcomes, whether it is creating awareness for customers or kind of driving traffic to a certain website or booking portal or whatever else it is. And then comes the purpose side of things, which is a little bit more reputation focused, wherein it's important for you to create the understanding about your company, what its mission is. If you make mistakes, then where and how that kind of came into being, and how are you kind of fixing it, and what's the direction the company is moving in. For us at Oyo, for example, this year has been a lot about resilience. We've kind of fought the toughest of battles, and now we are moving towards the direction where we do feel that if things go as planned or as they look right now, keeping aside all the uncertainties that the pandemic keeps throwing at us, then yeah, we will kind of come out of this stronger, much stronger than how we kind of entered this crisis, and there will be the resurgence of brand Oyo, and I'm sure the entire Indian startup ecosystem will be proud of us.
Thank you, Prasida, for giving us a peek into your role at OYO. It's been a fascinating conversation, and thank you for sharing your thoughts and insights in a very transparent manner. Thank you, Prasida.
Thank you for the opportunity. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.